there has to be some form of punishment.
Trump loves to talk tough, which is hard to do when you start every day with a hairstylist and an orange spray tan. But Tiny Fingers is melting down after Biden commuted the death sentences of some 40-plus criminals on death row 2 days before Christmas.
President Biden is commuting the death sentences of dozens of inmates. Tell us more about this.
Well, Joe, there are 40 inmates on the federal death row, and the President Biden decided to commute the sentences of 37 of those inmates effective this morning. And this is something that we thought might be coming. We know that the federal death penalty had been frozen essentially since 2021 at the advice of the Attorney General. And so no one had been executed in the United States on federal death row since then. And so with this commutation, the president released a statement saying that this is in line with his long held belief that people on death row, murderers, all of these people who are currently on death row are murderers, should not be executed. He said that executions shouldn't happen except for in cases of terrorism and hate-motivated mass murder. We know the 3 people who will remain on death row, the Boston Marathon bomber, Dylan Ruth, the person responsible for the Mother Emanuel AME church shooting in South Carolina, as well as Robert Bowers, who committed the Tree of Life synagogue mass murder a couple of years ago. They remain on death row, Joe.
Okay, now here's Trump's tweet.
As soon as I'm inaugurated, I will direct the Justice Department to vigorously pursue the death penalty to protect American families and children from violent rapists, murderers, and monsters. We will be a nation of law and order again.
Oh, you're so butch, Donnie. I bet you dream of putting a cap in Santa's ass if you find him in your living room. But there are a few problems here. Your 2 nominees for Department of Justice are sexual predators.
Sex charges against me.
On behalf of all the women, and I know it's many, you have abused in some way, I say get some help and take an honest look at yourself.
But for you, that's probably a plus.
Trump is a sexual predator.
And 2, these guys aren't going anywhere. Death row is a horrible existence, and they will die behind bars. So, Donnie, you're not protecting anyone. And we know why you're getting all tittered. The whole world is watching Musk transform you into what we already knew you were. A little bitch. But that was kind of obvious from the start, right? First it was Putin, now it's Elon, who is truly everything Trump wants to be, but is unable to achieve. An obscenely rich, sociopathic, racist, homophobic pig. And it's become so obvious that Trump has to address it in public.
The new one is, President Trump has ceded the presidency to Elon Musk. No, that's not happening. But Elon's done an amazing job. Isn't it nice to have smart people that we can rely on? No, he's not going to be president, that I can tell you. And I'm safe. You know why? He can't be. He wasn't born in this country.
And Tiny Finger's denial reveals the truth. But back to the tweet. What is this thing you have about rapists? Is it a competitive thing? And rape is no longer a crime punishable by death. Which brings me to this question. If we're going to have a death penalty, what crimes would fall under its hammer?
And we're here. We saw what happened. It was a violent insurrection.
Treason and insurrection? Before you answer that, Donnie, I'd check with your lawyer.
It's not fair.
But first, the death penalty. It doesn't work. It doesn't protect anyone. No one in the last century has ever escaped from death row and hurt someone. And the idea that the death penalty actually serves some form of justice is bullshit. It isn't a deterrent, because if it was, we'd only have to execute one person and everyone would go, whoa, I better not do that. And for centuries, while there were public hangings for things as simple as theft, there'd be pickpockets in the crowd as the person was being hanged. And how ironic is it, or not, that states with the most executions also happen to be the most conservative states with the most churches?
If a man also lie with mankind as he lieth with the woman, both of them have committed an abomination, they shall surely be put to death.
Okay, so I'm not a believer. Help me out. I mean, I've read the 10 Commandments, and I'm pretty sure it says, thou shalt not kill, not thou shalt not kill, unless it's politically viable and a way to placate stupid rednecks and conservatives. And here's a shocker. Since the death penalty was reinstated in the U.S. in 1976, 1,500 people have been executed. But 190 people on death row were exonerated. And today, the Innocence Project every year finds innocent people waiting to be executed. But you think Trump cares?
The state saw the lynch mob as being a direct threat against their authority to issue physical domination and social control over its everyday citizens. And so the state's law enforcement and criminal punishment systems made it a mission to prove to the lynch mob and to society that they could exact retribution to wrongdoers accused of committing criminal offenses.
As lynchings declined in the early 1900s, state-sanctioned executions rose dramatically until the 1930s.
Around that time, approximately 160 people were being put to death by the government each year. But these executions didn't have broad support. By the 1960s, public opinion in favor of the death penalty had dropped significantly. Gallup polls found that the amount of Americans in support of capital punishment declined from 62% in 1936 to 42% in 1966. In 1972, the Supreme Court issued a landmark decision that reflected public opinion. The court ruled in Furman versus Georgia that the death penalty was cruel and unusual punishment, which violated the Constitution. This ruling effectively suspended the death penalty nationwide.
In the Supreme Court's decision in Furman v. Georgia in 1972, the Supreme Court compared being issued a death sentence to being struck by lightning.
A justice on the majority of Furman wrote that it was unconstitutional for the death penalty to continue with a system that allows for executions to be so wantonly and so freakishly imposed. In other words, the Supreme Court saw the death penalty as arbitrary. After states imposed additional rules to supposedly eliminate its arbitrary use, capital punishment was reinstated in 1976. Just 4 years later.
We hold that the statutory system under which Greg was sentenced to death does not violate the Constitution.
How is a death penalty being used unfairly? Well, in Alabama, for example, a white man convicted of first-degree murder gets life. A black man does the same, gets death. But that hypocrisy from the right is happening every day. Trump pardoned Michael Flynn, who wanted to overthrow the government, a capital crime. And in November and December of 2020, Trump pardoned 4 Blackwater guards convicted of killing Iraqi civilians in 2007. Apparently, Iraqi lives don't count. And these soldiers, they didn't get clemency. They got pardoned, set free. So how do you say it, Donnie? Rapists, murderers, and monsters?
In June of 2020, when he wanted to deploy active duty troops on the street of Washington, D.C., and suggested actually that we shoot Americans in the street. So
Trump is a weak little man, a man who called for the death penalty for the Central Park Five, who were found innocent by a jury, yet Trump still calls for their execution. Or should I say murder?
It's the enemy from within.
Biden did the right thing, and for Christians, what a better time. But he should have included everyone on death row, and he should have done it sooner. If and when Trump begins mass deportations of undocumented workers and their children who are U.S. citizens, more people will get hurt. But Trump doesn't care for them any more than he claims to care for these families of these victims. It's all about acting tough.
Put on your big boy pants.
But Trump is a pussy hawk. I mean, he talks tough, but is weak where it counts. Anathema to this time of year, where Christmas and Hanukkah come together, and believers and non-believers try to find peace in a turbulent world. Yeah, but good luck there, because here in the U.S., with over 300 million guns and right-wing rhetoric dominating the land, maybe Santa should be careful. Instead of cookies and milk, maybe a Glock instead.
Damn right. It's not fair.
I'm as mad as hell. This is not a normal election.
Whether the women like it or not.
Suck my fat one.
And this guy's personal life is a total disaster.
I don't want to talk about this stuff.
Am I wrong?
Yes.
Tick-tock.
You're in a lot of trouble, Donnie.
I think he's crazy.
I'm Chip Franklin.